Hello, and welcome to the Smart Injury Doctors Podcast, the injury market's top program for doctors, lawyers, and insurers who want to gain greater insight on how to improve patient recovery results and deliver better services in the U.S. injury market. Please welcome your host, Dr. Jeffrey Allen Kronk.
Okay, doctors, today what I want to talk about is impairment rating. An impairment. It's actually a big part of any injury practice because an impairment is an injury. There are really no impairments without injury. And you just have to understand the definition of an impairment. You'll understand that they are all injuries. So an impairment is by definition a loss. I lost my arm. My arm got cut off. I have an amputation of my arm. A loss of use of. Somebody cut the nerve to my arm, or in an accident, the nerve to my arm was cut. I no longer can use my arm. So that's a loss of use of, or a derangement of a body part itself. That's what an impairment is. Now, that derangement of a body part can cause malfunction to an organ system in the body. So if I have a derangement in the heart, it can cause a problem of loss of function to the cardiovascular system, for example. So it's a loss of use of, or derangement of a body part. It's an injury. It's always been an injury. Now, the AMA impairment guides are the easiest thing in the world to use. They're not, there's no difficulty to using them at all. Now, you're going to use, depending on, here's one of the major confusions, though, that most people have with the impairment guides. The impairment guides, when somebody says my state uses this level of impairment guide, what they mean is that my work comp jurisdiction in my state delegates that in work comp, this is the level of guideline that I'm going to use, or this is the edition of guideline I'm going to use. So there's impairment and there's disability. Impairment is a injury. Disability is the effect that that injury has on your ability to work. So I can have something, I can have a loss of my little finger in a car accident, my left-hand finger. I'm a banker and I write with my right hand. I don't do hardly anything with my left hand. I'm going to have an impairment that has very little disability to it. Now, if I have that same analogy and I lost my little finger, but I'm a professional concert pianist and I can't play anymore at that level, I have a huge disability. It's hugely affected my ability to earn a living. So think of impairment as the injury, and disability is how it affects your ability to earn a living. And you'll have the two pretty much squared away. Now, there's many different government agencies, and they combine some of these terms, and they make it very confusing. But the bottom line is impairment is the injury, and disability is how it affects the person's ability to earn a living. That's called disability. Now, an impairment comes with a rating. A rating just tells you the percentage of activities of daily living that will somehow negatively be influenced. So if you say a 5% impairment, you say 5% of their activities of daily living are somehow going to be negatively influenced, either now or into the future. If you say 25%, it's the same thing. So the impairment guides are the international and national guides for impairment. So it's like the Kelley Blue Book for bodies. You know, you have a Kelley Blue Book for cars, and it says, hey, if you've been in an accident, or you've had, this much damage in the car, this is how much it decreases the value of the car. Well, the AMA impairment guidelines are kind of like, hey, this is how it increases or decreases the value of the body. That it puts more, you're basically going to have more problems with this body that you have that has a permanent impairment to it. So it's really, really easy. In the spine, it's super easy. Because in the spine, there's really only three main impairments. There's only two tissues that comprise a spine. It's just bone and connective tissue. So both connective tissue injury and bone injuries comprise a permanent impairment. If I have a 24% compression fracture at C4, C5, I have a 5% impairment, 5 to 8% impairment in, say, that cervical spine under the AMA fifth. Generally, it's close to the same in the sixth. So there's just bone injuries and connective tissue injury. The connective tissue injury is excessive motion. That's called alteration motion segment integrity. That's a level of excessive motion. You have disc herniation. If you have disc herniation and the radicular complaint goes away, if there is a radicular complaint with a disc herniation, it's a lesser impairment. So an impairment rating system is just what the whole world rates the injury's effect on the body. How much is that injury going to negatively affect that person either now or into the future? That's why they're so beautiful to use. I've used them since 1995. They're incredible to use. Now, you a lot of times can't go out and talk to attorneys about impairment. I have a whole program called the Smart Injury Doctors program. We teach you not to do that. Because they don't understand it. We teach you to go and lead with what they do understand. So now, getting back to it, you have these jurisdictions that dictate. So you can use whatever addition matches what the condition is that you have. Let's take, for example, you have excessive motion at C5 and C6, and you have 3.7 millimeters of translation. Okay, in the 5th edition, the condition was determined by back and forth motion. In the 6th edition, it's one-way motion. So since they didn't put it in the 6th edition, the back and forth motion, one could easily say this condition is represented in the 5th, not represented in the 6th, so I have to go back to the 5th. Now, you can easily go also to surgical guidelines. If somebody's saying, oh my gosh, I don't know, this is this is because it's not in the 6th, this 3.7 millimeters is not in the 6th, it's not, it doesn't have value, or it's not an impairment. You just go to the surgical guidelines. Go out to Spinal Kinetics, go to our surgical guideline references, and you'll see that, qualifies for spinal fusion surgery. So it's obviously it's a significant injury, and you're going to see in the spinal fusion surgery guidelines, it's the back and forth motion, not the one-way motion, although some of them will also have the one-way motion. So in the 6th edition, the only thing that really changed was it's a sliding scale for how many levels of alteration motion segment integrity do you have, or how many levels of disc herniation do you have, how many levels of radicular complaint do you have, are they still there, are they not there? So it's a sliding scale. It's a real easy thing to use. You just go out to impairmaster.com, highly recommend it. Don't make any commission on it or anything else. And they have a beautiful software that just shows you what to do. And it's very, very easy. But here's the thing I'll warn you on. There are teachers out there that talk about, God knows where they get this stuff from, because it's just, to me, it's absolutely crazy. It's too easy. If I have 3 millimeters of translation, it doesn't qualify for alteration motion segment integrity, but it does qualify for an impairment if it causes asymmetrical range of motion. It's just a DRE category 2. And so if it causes that asymmetrical range of motion, it's a 5% impairment. Now, there are trainers out there that'll say you take excessive motion and prorate it. I've spoken, I think that's the craziest. There's no way in the world I would touch that. It's not in the guidelines anywhere. And it's too out on the fringe. Now, here's why I would never touch that. I would never touch that because you do that for 2, 3, 4 years. And then it's really easy to just have an insurer say, hey, you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. You've cost us a lot of money because you didn't have any rationale for doing it. So, I'm one that says just keep it straight. There are some that are trying to they push impairment, and they try to push impairment beyond. It's just play it straight. Just keep it very, very straight. Don't prorate. You got a 3.3 millimeter translation at C5 and C6, but it didn't qualify for 3.5, and it's 90. I don't even know how the prorations would go, but I'm going to tell you it's too easy just to play it straight in the AMA guides, and don't do things. There's a few I've heard attorneys, and I've heard a couple of trainers train like that. I have no idea where they got that from. Zero. I know it was just made up by somebody. I just don't know who made it up, but it's made up. It's not in the guides anywhere. So the biggest thing, though, is just keep it straight. The AMA guides are super, super easy to use. And again, you're not going to go out, you're not going to talk to attorneys about the AMA guides. I wouldn't recommend that because they don't really understand it. Now, you can once they start asking you questions about it. So if I want to go out and talk impairment, I'm going to talk about surgical because people understand surgery. They understand pre-qualifications for surgery. Now, they might also understand permanent injury. Okay, well, what's a permanent injury? It's an impairment. I don't have to talk about impairment. I can talk about permanent injury. What's a future prognosis? Well, it's a whole person impairment. What does that mean? Whole person impairment. If I have a 25% whole person impairment, it means either now or into the future, 25% of that person's activities of daily living are somehow going to be negatively influenced. Isn't that a prognosis? Isn't that what a prognosis is? Couldn't I look at a whole body impairment percentage and say that is my prognosis? The beautiful thing is I'm not saying it's my prognosis. The AMA is saying it is the prognosis. And that's a beautiful thing, but I don't have to talk about it. I hope you get the logic of this. I don't necessarily have to talk directly about the AMA guides in order to have these conversations. I just need to know the material well enough so I can explain it in different ways that people can understand it. And that's one of the things that we do. That's what we do in the Smart Injury Doctors program. And that's what I do in my educational system called the Smart Injury Doctors program, is take these concepts and make them simple so doctors can go out, not only explain them, but also use them and use them beneficially for everybody. They're beneficial for everybody involved. So anyway, I just want to do a little bit of a take on the impairment rating itself in using impairment ratings. Doctors, if you have any questions, I'm sure I've got other podcasts on this topic. We've done over a couple hundred now. So I'm sure there's more. If you search, there's more information. You can go out to, if you're interested in our program, Smart Injury Doctors program, you just go out to our website, www.smartinjurydoctors.com, or you can call us at 877-508-9729. And I'm sorry, 800-940-6513. And just check us out. Doctors, as always, I appreciate your time, your attention. I hope you got something from this, and just keep it simple when it comes to impairment rating. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Smart Injury Doctors Podcast, the #1 audio production show for professionals in the U.S. injury market that want to deliver better injury services to the patients, clients, or insureds they serve. If you like what you heard today, please leave us a review and don't forget to join us on our next program.